So Casey Neistat gave a discussion at B&H, and there was a lot of things that he covered. Very interesting stuff. Let's get into it. So for those who don't know, Casey Neistat is a longtime YouTube content creator, vlogger, filmmaker, and he gave a discussion at B&H, which is a camera shop, camera store, online, amazing stuff. It's one of my go-tos for equipment, so highly recommend B&H as well. And I guess they invited him over to talk about vlogging and YouTubing and things like that. But Casey Neistat has a very interesting way at looking at art, and I find myself agreeing with most of his points.
So if that's what you're attracted to, and if that's why you're in it, God bless. And when I say that, I mean if these are your goals, if to be Mr. Beast and have the wealth and the amazing things that he's built and accomplished, that's why you're in it, then God bless. But that's not why I'm in it. And I don't understand that. And that's not for me. Why I'm in it is to make something that I think matters. When I listen to a song and it makes me cry, when I watch a movie and it makes me think, when I see a painting and it makes me want to get out of my chair and go make something, like that to me is the most beautiful, virtuous thing that you can do as a creative individual. And that's what I aspire towards.
So what are the things I want to talk about? One of them was that he mentioned a Rick Rubin quote, and basically the idea was that an artist should make the thing, and after the fact, after it's been made, decide whether or not it can be sold. I've done this many times where like I've made something just for the sake of making it, because I don't think there's anyone else for this. This is something that I made because I needed to make it, but there's nowhere for it to go. But also that made me think of, that's why some creators don't make it in this new landscape, which is something he didn't talk about. But there's also this other aspect of it, that a lot of creative people, you now have to be a one-man band, right? You need to know how to market yourself, how to promote yourself, and things like that. And once upon a time, if you just made really good art, you would probably find a manager and so on and so forth, that then you make the art and they will find someone to buy it for you. I don't think we live in an era where that's actually happening anymore. I think you have to get yourself to a certain status, and once you're at that status, then you might get a manager too. Then you might get people that kind of build that infrastructure for you to just create and do nothing other than the fun stuff. But in order to get to that point, I do think you have to start learning a little bit about everything, and you do have to come up with a concrete plan. And that was one of the things that he discussed that I absolutely agreed with. This idea of like, there are people creating things using a checklist and checking off the boxes, like it should be, it should sound, it should, and I honestly think that's why the Marvel movies aren't hitting the same. I think that's why the Star Wars movies, they weren't very successful. I think that's the problem that big budget movies are having, is that they're not being allowed to be creative and experimental. They don't want to, put $200 million down on something where someone's going to experiment. They want it to be a sure bet, and so they come up with this check boxes, like it has to have, it has to have, it has to have. That's so based on a formula that it just doesn't seem genuine. It doesn't seem sincere. It doesn't seem as though they take you seriously as a viewer. He talks about it, how Mr. Beast did something unique and very successful, and now you have a million different Mr. Beast Juniors. And I think that's why when people hear about like YouTube and things like that, there's always the good aspect of it. It's something where people that are creative want to make things and share things, and they can do that. But then there's also the other aspect of it where like people want fame, they want fortune, and they think this is that way of getting it. And like, Casey Neistat even says it, like, that's not what he's into. That's not what I'm into either.
When was the peak engagement? Okay, when did we lose engagement? All right, what was happening in that moment? How do we get rid of that? It is this scientific approach to making videos that has worked when it comes to really garnering views and making this incredible business and industry that he has uniquely created. I commend him for that. But that's not why I'm in it at all.
And I think that's why some people don't really value or respect YouTube, because there's so many people that jump into it. But it's kind of like Ratatouille. Like, just because everyone can cook, that doesn't mean that everyone's going to be an amazing chef. And Casey Neistat's analogy to that was something of, just because everyone can jump in the pool doesn't mean everyone's going to swim. And I agreed with that, and I think that that's something that creative people really need to take home. Like I said, like, don't just dial it in, don't just do what you're supposed to do or what you think you're supposed to do. And the last thing I want to talk about was his kind of like final thought of, you know, his advice for creative people. It was basically that you have to have patience. You have to show up and want to do this thing regardless. And he talks about how, like, you know, you can spend 20, 30 years and not be successful. And I always think of the director of the first Deadpool, how, you know, he was already 50 years old when he finally got to direct the movie. And that kind of stuff happens, and it's not uncommon in the creative field, right? And the second point he made, which was just do your thing. You know, don't try to imitate other people, but rather just make what it is you feel the urge to make. And I think that that's always good. I think you should always make whatever you have the urge to make. I definitely agree with the idea of, like, every time you're making something, you're gonna learn something, right? It's almost like doing a push-up. Like, you don't do one push-up and you're done. You do them continuously to build strength and endurance or whatever. And I feel it's the same thing with creative processes, right? The more you do that thing, the better you become at it, the more fluid you become at it, the more endurance you have. So keep creating, keep doing your thing. I will be linking the full discussion that was held at B&H for you guys to peep that out at your leisure. I know a lot of us have time off coming up, so maybe you have time to just sit down and listen to that. Link in the show notes as well to the Big Cartel Shop, where you can get a single issue of the Feral Comics Project or your subscription. Beyond that, thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Later.